Hashtag Logan Paul ask for help from Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed against Rey Mysterio backstage at RAW. You want to know what desperation looks like? You want to see what happens when ego meets reality? Logan Paul, the YouTube star turned WWE sensation, the man who walked into this business like he owned it, the cocky millionaire who thought his highlight reels and social media followers made him untouchable, just got down on his knees backstage at Monday Night Raw and begged two of the most dangerous monsters in WWE to save him from Rey Mysterio. That's right, Rey Mysterio. A man half his size. A legend who's been doing this for 3 decades while Logan was still making Vine videos in his bedroom. And Logan Paul is terrified. This isn't just wrestling drama. This is a full-blown psychological breakdown caught on camera. This is the moment the mask slipped. This is when we all realized that beneath the designer clothes, the million-dollar watches, and the manufactured confidence is a man who knows he's in way over his head. And what makes this even more insane? Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed, two men who could legitimately end careers with their bare hands, were standing there watching Logan Paul grovel like a child asking for protection from the boogeyman. But here's where this story gets twisted. Here's where everything you think you know about Monday Night Raw gets turned upside down. Because what happened in that backstage area wasn't just about one match. It wasn't just about Rey Mysterio handing Logan Paul another reality check. This was about power. This was about alliances being formed in the shadows. This was about the entire landscape of WWE RAW being redrawn right before our eyes, and nobody saw it coming. You're about to witness the most shocking backstage revelation of the year. You're about to see how one conversation could change everything. And by the time we're done here, you're going to understand exactly why Logan Paul made the most dangerous decision of his wrestling career. Let's rewind. Let's go back to where this nightmare began for Logan Paul. 3 months ago, Logan Paul was on top of the world. He just had a match at WrestleMania that had critics and fans alike admitting grudgingly, painfully, that maybe this YouTube star actually belonged in a WWE ring. The athleticism was undeniable. The charisma was electric. The ability to play the villain while making people pay attention to every single word? That was textbook heel work. Logan Paul had cracked the code. He'd figured out how to transition from internet celebrity to legitimate WWE superstar, and he was thriving on the heat. But then he made one critical mistake. One decision that would haunt him like a curse. He opened his mouth about Rey Mysterio. In an interview that went viral because of course it did, everything Logan touches goes viral, he said something that crossed a line even by wrestling standards. He looked into that camera with that smirk we've all come to despise and said Rey Mysterio is living off a legacy that should have ended 15 years ago. He's a nostalgia act. A tribute band to himself. And honestly, it's embarrassing watching him try to keep up with the new generation. With guys like me. The wrestling world exploded. Social media went into meltdown. But here's the thing about Rey Mysterio that Logan Paul clearly didn't understand. Rey isn't just respected, he's revered. He's not just a legend, he's a symbol of what it means to overcome every single obstacle the wrestling business throws at you. Size, injuries, critics, doubters. Rey Mysterio has spent 30 years proving people wrong, and Logan Paul just walked up and spat in the face of that legacy. Rey's response? Silence. For 2 weeks, Rey Mysterio said nothing. And that silence was terrifying. Because anyone who knows Rey Mysterio knows that when he goes quiet, when he stops smiling, when that mask seems to get just a little bit darker, that's when you should be afraid. Then came last month's Raw. Logan Paul was in the ring, doing his usual shtick, mocking the audience, taking selfies, acting like he was the most important person in the building. The lights cut out. When they came back on, Rey Mysterio was standing on the ramp. No music. No pyro. Just Rey, standing there, staring at Logan Paul with the intensity of a man who'd been disrespected for the last time. What happened next was poetry and violence. Rey hit the ring like a hurricane. Logan tried to fight back, credit where it's due. He didn't run, but Rey Mysterio at 49 years old moved like he was 25 again. Every move was crisp. Every strike had bad intentions behind it. The 619 connected so hard that Logan Paul's head nearly spun off his shoulders. The crowd went nuclear. And when Rey stood over Logan's broken body in the center of that ring, he said just 3 words into the microphone: respect your elders. The segment ended. The show moved on. But backstage? Backstage, Logan Paul was furious. Not humiliated. Not embarrassed. Furious. Because in Logan's mind, he didn't just lose a segment, he lost control of his narrative, his brand, his image. And for a man whose entire career is built on curating how the world sees him, that was unacceptable. Quick question for you watching right now: do you think Rey Mysterio went too far, or did Logan Paul have this coming? Drop your answer in the comments, ****. So Logan did what Logan always does when things don't go his way. He plotted. He schemed. He started looking for an edge. And that's when he noticed something very interesting happening on Raw. Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed had been on an absolute tear. These two monsters, and I'm not exaggerating when I call them monsters, had been dismantling everyone put in front of them. Bron Breakker, the second-generation powerhouse with the intensity of a pit bull and the strength of a freight train. Bronson Reed, the 330-pound wrecking ball from Australia who moves like he weighs half that and hits like he weighs double. Together, they were an apocalypse. But here's what made them even more dangerous: they were unpredictable. They weren't aligned with any faction. They weren't taking orders from management. They were just two forces of nature doing whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, to whoever got in their way. Pure, unbridled chaos. And Logan Paul, watching this unfold week after week, started to see an opportunity. If he could somehow get these two on his side, even temporarily, he'd have the perfect insurance policy against Rey Mysterio. The perfect equalizer. Because let's be honest, Logan knew that in a straight one-on-one fight, Rey Mysterio would eat him alive. But if he had Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed as backup, different story. So Logan started dropping hints, complimenting them in interviews, posting about them on social media, trying to create some kind of rapport. But Bron and Bronson? They didn't give him the time of day. They weren't interested in Logan Paul's influencer games. They were predators, and Logan, despite all his bravado, clearly wasn't on their level. Then Adam Pearce announced it. Logan Paul vs. Rey Mysterio, next week on Raw. One-on-one. No disqualifications. And that's when Logan's confidence started to crack. Because here's what Logan Paul realized in that moment: this wasn't going to be like his other matches. This wasn't going to be a carefully choreographed showcase where he got to look good and hit his spots and leave with his reputation intact. Rey Mysterio was coming for blood. This was personal. And in a no DQ environment, Rey could do anything. Chairs, tables, kendo sticks. Hell, Rey could probably turn the ring post itself into a weapon if he was motivated enough. Logan needed help. Desperately. And so, on this past Monday's Raw, something happened backstage that has the entire wrestling world buzzing. Security footage leaked, of course, because nothing stays secret in WWE, showed Logan Paul walking through the backstage area, clearly looking for someone. He checked the locker rooms, the catering area, the parking lot, and finally, he found them. Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed, sitting in a production area, just finished with their match earlier in the night. What happened next was stunning. Logan Paul approached them and you could see it in his body language, in the way he was carrying himself. This wasn't the cocky YouTube star we're used to seeing. This was a man who knew he was asking for something from people who could crush him like an insect. This was vulnerability. This was desperation. The audio on the footage is rough, but here's what we could make out. Logan started talking, gesturing, clearly making his case. At one point, he literally spread his hands out in a pleading gesture. Bron Breakker was leaning back, arms crossed, face completely unreadable. Bronson Reed was just staring at Logan with those cold, calculating eyes that have been the last thing so many superstars see before they get demolished. Logan kept talking, kept pleading, and this is the part that made my jaw drop when I saw the footage. Logan Paul actually reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He showed them something on his screen. Bron leaned forward to look. Bronson's eyebrow raised just slightly. Whatever Logan showed them, it got their attention. The three of them talked for another minute. Then Bron Breakker stood up, all 6 feet 1 inch and 230 pounds of pure muscle and violence, and looked down at Logan Paul. The pause felt like it lasted forever. And then Bron nodded. Just once. Just a single nod. Bronson Reed stood up next. Same thing. One nod. And then both men walked past Logan Paul without another word, leaving him standing there alone in that backstage area, looking like a man who just made a deal with the devil. Here's a question for you: what do you think Logan Paul showed them on his phone? Money? Dirt on someone? A business opportunity? Let me know what you think in the comments. ****. Now here's where this story gets complicated, because we need to understand what this alliance means for everyone involved. For Logan Paul, it's obvious. He gets protection. He gets backup. He gets an insurance policy against Rey Mysterio's wrath. But more than that, he gets something he's been chasing since he stepped into WWE. He gets credibility. Because whether you like Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed or not, you respect their abilities. You respect their dominance. And if they're willing to stand with Logan Paul, even temporarily, that says something. It legitimizes him in a way his YouTube fame never could. But what about Bron and Bronson? Why would they agree to this? What's in it for them? That's the million-dollar question that everyone's trying to figure out. Because these guys don't strike me as the type to just help someone out of the goodness of their hearts. They're not charity workers. They're mercenaries. So either Logan Paul offered them something substantial and given his net worth, that's entirely possible, or there's something else going on here. Some bigger play we're not seeing yet. Here's my theory, and I want you to hear me out on this. I think Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed are playing the long game. I think they're using Logan Paul as a stepping stone to something bigger. Think about it. Logan Paul has connections. He has mainstream media attention. He has the ear of WWE management because let's be real, he draws ratings. If Bron and Bronson align themselves with Logan, even temporarily, they get access to opportunities they might not have had before. Championship matches, main event spots, WrestleMania moments. And if they're smart, which I believe they are, they're already thinking about what happens after they help Logan Paul. Because helping Logan beat Rey Mysterio would make them enemies of one of the most beloved figures in WWE history. It would make them the most hated heels on Raw. And in wrestling, heat equals money. Heat equals opportunities. Heat equals power. So maybe this isn't about Logan Paul at all. Maybe Logan Paul is just a tool, a means to an end. And the second he's no longer useful, Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed will turn on him so fast it'll make everyone's head spin. But let's talk about the elephant in the room here. Let's talk about what this means for Rey Mysterio. Because Rey isn't just facing Logan Paul anymore. He's potentially facing three men. Three very dangerous men. And while Rey Mysterio is absolutely legendary, while his heart is as big as any giant's, the math here is brutal. Rey is 49 years old. He's had more injuries than most people have had hot meals. His knees are held together with hope and athletic tape. And now he's got to figure out how to overcome not just the cocky YouTube star he wanted to teach a lesson, but two of the most destructive forces in modern WWE. This is where the story becomes tragic. Because Rey Mysterio didn't start this fight to become some kind of martyr. He didn't start this to prove he could still go against impossible odds. He started this because Logan Paul disrespected everything Rey has built over 30 years. This was supposed to be about principle, about defending his legacy, about showing that you don't get to walk into this business and mock the people who built it without consequences. But now it's become something else entirely. Now it's become a potential massacre. And here's what kills me about this situation: Rey probably knows he's walking into a trap. Rey Mysterio isn't stupid. He's been in this business long enough to see every trick, every angle, every betrayal. He knows that Logan Paul recruiting backup is exactly the kind of coward move Logan would make. And yet Rey hasn't backed down. He hasn't asked for help. He hasn't tried to recruit his own backup or turn this into some kind of faction warfare. Why? Because Rey Mysterio doesn't need help to prove his point. Because accepting help would be admitting that Logan Paul was right about him being past his prime. And Rey would rather get destroyed trying to fight this battle alone than prove Logan Paul's insults correct. That's not just pride. That's not just stubbornness. That's warrior mentality. That's the same mentality that has kept Rey Mysterio relevant and dominant for 3 decades. And it's the same mentality that might get him seriously hurt. Be honest with me, is Rey Mysterio being brave or foolish for not getting backup? Drop a comment and let's debate this. ****. Let's talk about what this could look like in the match itself, because the possibilities here are terrifying. Scenario 1: Logan Paul comes out alone. The match starts. It's competitive. Rey's getting the better of Logan, hitting those signature moves, building to that 619. The crowd's going insane. And then, just as Rey's about to seal the victory, Bron Breakker's music hits. Bronson Reed's music hits. They storm the ring. They annihilate Rey Mysterio while Logan Paul watches from the corner, that smirk back on his face. Match is thrown out. Logan Paul doesn't get the win, but he gets what he really wanted: Rey Mysterio broken, battered, and humiliated. Scenario 2: Logan Paul convinces Adam Pearce to make this a handicap match. Logan, Bron, and Bronson versus Rey Mysterio. 3-on-1. And somehow, Rey Mysterio fights like a man possessed and nearly pulls off the impossible. He takes out Bronson Reed with a Hurricane Rana to the outside. He hits Bron Breakker with a 619. He's setting up for the finish on Logan Paul. But then the numbers game catches up. Bron recovers. Bronson recovers. And they finish what they started with a triple powerbomb that leaves Rey unconscious in the middle of the ring. Scenario 3, and this is the one that keeps me up at night: what if this is all a setup for something even darker? What if Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed are planning to double-cross Logan Paul mid-match? What if they come out to help Logan, but then turn on both Logan and Rey, establishing themselves as the most chaotic force on Raw? What if this entire thing is about them making a statement that nobody is safe? Any of these scenarios could happen. All of these scenarios could happen. And that's what makes this so compelling. That's what makes this feel less like a wrestling storyline and more like a thriller movie where you have no idea who's going to survive. Now let's zoom out for a second and talk about what this means for WWE RAW as a whole, because this isn't happening in a vacuum. We're in the middle of a new era in WWE. Triple H is running creative. The talent is as stacked as it's ever been. Championships mean something again. Storylines are complex and layered. And into this environment comes Logan Paul, this outsider who represents everything that some wrestling purists hate about modern WWE. The celebrity involvement. The focus on mainstream appeal. The idea that you can just buy your way into the business without paying your dues. But here's the thing, Logan Paul is also undeniably talented. His matches are good. His promos generate heat. He understands psychology. So the question becomes, does WWE embrace Logan Paul as a full-time talent? Do they build him up as a legitimate star? Or do they use him as a special attraction, someone who comes in a few times a year to boost ratings and sell tickets? This Rey Mysterio feud might answer that question, because if Logan Paul wins even with help, that sends a message. It says WWE is invested in Logan Paul as more than just a celebrity guest. It says they see him as a long-term piece of the puzzle. It legitimizes everything Logan has done in WWE and sets him up for even bigger matches down the line. But if Rey Mysterio wins? If Rey somehow overcomes the odds and beats Logan Paul even with Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed in his corner? That tells a different story. That says WWE is still prioritizing the old guard. That says legacy still matters more than hype. That says you can't just walk into this business and expect to be handed everything. And the political implications of either outcome are massive. Because you've got guys in the locker room who've been grinding for years trying to get opportunities. You've got talent from NXT looking at Logan Paul getting main event spots and wondering what they have to do to get that same attention. You've got veterans who've paid their dues watching Logan Paul potentially leapfrog them with help from two other rising stars. This creates tension. This creates resentment. This creates the kind of backstage drama that either tears a locker room apart or motivates everyone to step up their game. And honestly, I'm not sure which one is happening right now. Quick one for you, do you think WWE superstars backstage are jealous of Logan Paul's push, or do they respect what he brings to the company? Let me know, *****. Let's talk about Bron Breakker specifically for a moment, because his involvement in this is fascinating from a legacy standpoint. Bron Breakker is Rick Steiner's son. He's part of the Steiner family, one of the most respected families in wrestling history. The Steiners were monsters in their day. Technical excellence combined with raw power. They were legitimate badasses who could wrestle, brawl, and intimidate with equal effectiveness. And Bron has inherited all of that. But here's where it gets interesting. Bron has been vocal subtly, but vocal about wanting to establish his own legacy. He doesn't want to just be Rick Steiner's son, he wants to be Bron Breakker. And aligning himself with Logan Paul, helping a YouTube celebrity beat a legend like Rey Mysterio? That's a statement. That's Bron saying, I'm my own man. I make my own decisions. I don't care about your nostalgia or your traditions. It's almost rebellious in a way. It's Bron rejecting the idea that he has to be respectful to the old guard just because they came before him. And in wrestling, that kind of attitude can make you either a star or a pariah. There's no middle ground. Now, Bronson Reed's motivations are less clear, but potentially more interesting. Bronson has been a workhorse his entire career. NXT, independent scene, back to NXT, then main roster. He's put in the work. He's paid the dues that people say Logan Paul hasn't paid. So why would he align with Logan? My theory? Bronson Reed is tired of waiting. He's tired of being overlooked. He's tired of watching guys get opportunities while he's stuck in the midcard. So when Logan Paul came to him with an offer, whatever that offer was, Bronson saw it as a shortcut, a way to accelerate his trajectory. And honestly, I can't blame him. Wrestling is a business. If you're not looking out for yourself and making strategic moves to advance your career, you're going to get left behind. But let's bring this back to the emotional core of the story, because that's what makes this so compelling. Strip away all the politics and backstage maneuvering, and what you have is a classic wrestling narrative. The disrespectful young punk versus the respected veteran. The social media star with all the resources versus the working class hero who built his legacy one match at a time. The man with all the advantages versus the man with all the heart. Rey Mysterio represents something pure in wrestling. He represents the idea that size doesn't matter. That heart can overcome any obstacle. That if you work hard enough, if you want it bad enough, if you believe enough, you can achieve the impossible. Every single time Rey steps into that ring, he's proving that philosophy all over again. Logan Paul represents the opposite. He represents shortcuts, privilege, the idea that fame and money can buy you anything, including respect you haven't earned. And whether that's fair to Logan or not, because again, the guy is talented, that's the perception. That's what he symbolizes to a lot of wrestling fans. So when these two clash, it's not just about one match. It's about two philosophies colliding. It's about what we value as a wrestling audience. Do we value authenticity and legacy? Or do we value star power and mainstream appeal? Do we respect the journey? Or do we just care about the destination? And now, with Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed in the mix, it becomes even more complicated. Because now you have two legitimately talented wrestlers, guys who have paid dues, who have worked their way up, potentially helping Logan Paul prove his point. That complicates the narrative. That makes it less black and white. Maybe Logan Paul is right to seek help. Maybe this isn't cowardice, maybe it's strategy. Maybe understanding that you can't do everything alone and building alliances is smart, not weak. Maybe Rey Mysterio's refusal to get backup isn't noble, maybe it's foolish. Maybe it's ego. Maybe it's the same pride that has led to Rey accumulating all those injuries over the years. I don't have the answers to these questions, but the fact that we're even asking them, that's what makes this storyline brilliant.